Rising Stars of SaaS is brought to you by Odoo is a fully customizable and fully integrated suite of software that lets you build and scale your stack as you build and scale your business. Your first app is free forever, and right now Odoo is offering $1,000 off your first implementation pack at odoo.com/twist. That's odoo.com/twist. LinkedIn Sales Navigator. With face-to-face meetings now a thing of the past, you'll need to quickly adapt your sales strategy to stay ahead. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is the tool designed to help you master digital selling. Go to linkedin.com/SaaS to start your 60-day free trial. That's linkedin.com/SaaS. And Pipe. SaaS companies, this is for you. Pipe helps you unlock your recurring revenue as upfront capital. No debt, no loans, no dilution. Sign up in minutes and start trading on Pipe free for 12 months at pipe.com/twist.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startup. Super excited to continue our Rising Stars of SaaS. That's software as a service, aka cloud computing, aka software in your browser, aka pay a monthly fee for software, not $400 to get a package. And we are cooking with oil in this series. We had Steve from Rapid Deploy on as our first guest, and then and he was working on helping 911 operators and first responders to lower the call time, right? Through software, through cloud, SaaS, through a cloud and SaaS solution, Rapid Deploy. Then we had Ben from Transcendon. He is making it easy for users to protect their privacy with online services and allowing those online services to be compliant with GDPR and CCAP and all this privacy regulation that's coming. So we're starting to see how software can take away friction and make the world more delightful through enterprise SaaS solutions. Today will be no different. Songe LaRon is the co-founder and CEO of Squire, which is getsquire.com.
Yep.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So Squire allows you, I guess you guys were like the Uber of barbershops in the beginning, but I think you quickly evolved into providing a full POS, point of sale, scheduling, and app development platform for all barbershops, correct?
Exactly. Yep.
So explain how many barbershops are using the software right now and what you enable them to do.
Yeah, we've got a little over 1,000 barbershops using the full system. And what we do is we essentially handle everything that a barbershop needs to run their business, from the booking to the online payment, to the point of sale payment in the shop, and then all the back end stuff, paying out the barbers, CRM, marketing. It's really a full end-to-end system focused specifically on the vertical of barbershops. We like to think of ourselves as providing everything that they need to run their business so they don't have to look outside of Squire for anything.
How much do you charge them for this? How do you charge them for this? And how did you come to that?
Yeah, so these are small business owners, and we felt early on that small business owners were pretty sensitive to their overhead, and there's a limit on how much you can charge them. So we charge a SaaS fee starting at $100 a month, going up to $250 a month, and that's really the upper limit of what we charge the shops directly.
So they can easily afford to pay that 100 because you're going to get them an incremental customer or two a month and then they break even. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Is that how they look at the decision?
Yeah, we don't really lead with, we're going to send you new customers, although we do send some new customers. We really focus more on, we're going to make your life easier and running your shop easier. We're going to streamline all of your operations. We're going to take things that used to take you 4 or 5 hours a week, and now it's just literally flipping a button, turning on one feature, and it handles it all for you.
And barbershops are actually collections of a bunch of little businesses, I believe, in most cases, like hair salons, where each of the barbers is running their own little 1099 business, correct? So if I own a barbershop and I have 4 or 5 people cutting or 4 or 5 chairs, they each are basically, I'm either renting those chairs out or revenue sharing. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Usually it's either renting, which we call the booth rental model, or it is a revenue share, which is called the commission model in the industry. So it's usually one of those or a hybrid of the two. And you're right, the overwhelming majority of barbers are 1099s, even though if they're on the commission model, they're treated more similarly to employees in the sense that they have a schedule and they have to kind of do what the owner says. And if they're booth rental, then it's really, they just do their own thing. They come and go as they please. And
what do they charge for a booth rental? A barbershop in a major city, LA, Atlanta, New York, Bay Area? Around
$200 to $300 a week usually.
Okay, so they pay $1,000 a month, $50 a day, but they get 100% of the revenue that comes in then.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you had 6 chairs in your barbershop and you had them fully rented, barbershop's making $6,000 on the chairs. They're paying $2,000 or $3,000 to keep the store up and running. They make the other $3,000 clear.
Yeah.
Is the basic concept for running it like a co-working space. This has got to be extremely complicated then in terms of billing and separating it. So that's what your software does is you say, hey, these 3 chairs are being rented. And then I'm assuming some people do a hybrid, right? Mm-hmm. Where they rent 3 chairs and then 3 chairs they're doing on commission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gets surprisingly complicated really quickly, more so than most people would think. But yeah, you're right. Depending on how the shop is set up, the owner has to, if it's a booth rental, he's got to be on top, he or she has to be on top of collecting his money, every week. So that in itself, is a task. And then a lot of shops want to have a centralized point of sale system. So now, how do you divvy that up? How do you make sure that each barber gets paid what they're owed and the shop gets what they're owed? And then you have to think about routing tips. It can get very, very complicated. And that's what we solve for all of those pain points with software.
Do you do the full POS and then they don't have to have Square or something like that? Or do you work with the other POS systems?
No, we're very, very selfish and about our customers. We don't want to work with anyone if we can avoid it. So we try to replace everything and do everything.
And so the POS just is like an iPad with a standard cash drawer, something you attach to it?
Yeah. We provide the cash drawer, the hardware, the iPad software, and then the actual physical card readers as well.
Are the folks running these businesses tech savvy and sophisticated in general? Or are they laggards like most people would suspect that they're the last people and they're just doing cash-based accounting out of a draw? Where do they stand? And then how do you convince them to make this giant leap to not only add, a digital point of sale, but then to add scheduling and payments and all this stuff? What's it like in terms of running a SaaS business like that? Yeah,
it's a pretty big spectrum. So you have on the high end, the more high-end shops that charge a higher price point are actually fairly tech savvy relative to other small business owners. And usually they're using some kind of software already. Often they're actually using 2 or 3 systems to run their business. And then the sell there is that, hey, we're streamlining everything, bringing it all into one and making it super easy to use. And we're the only software that's specifically tailored for your business and your industry. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have pen and paper, people who don't even want to take appointments. They want to do walk-in only and they want to, be cash only. That side of the spectrum obviously has been the most impacted by COVID. And you're seeing that they're being forced to really adopt software and technology because of the circumstances.
And what is that circumstance? They need to have appointments and they can't do walk-ins anymore because of social distancing, I would assume?
Exactly. They can't do walk-ins. They can't have people waiting in the shop. To your point, that you probably hate that when you need to get a haircut. Now, a lot of states are requiring that barbershops be appointment-based and encouraging them to use software. And then also cash. There's been a shift to being less cash-based, and people don't want to be exchanging money and they want contactless payment. These are all things that we've been preaching, and now it's kind of a reckoning within the industry that the shops that were really lagging behind are now being forced to catch up if they want to stay in business.
Yeah, the pandemic is certainly an accelerant. I'm curious when we get back from this quick break, what are you seeing change? We're taping this in October of 2020, month arguably 7 of this pandemic, right? March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, maybe month 8. So when we get back, I want to know what month 8 of the pandemic is looking like versus months 4 and months 1 and 2 when we get back on This Week in Startups. One of the toughest parts of building a company is choosing which tools and providers to use. You know this. You want to pick the best solution for each department to help your employees succeed because they deserve the best. We all know that. But there are so many functions in a startup, and each one has an endless list of potential vendors. There's sales tools, there's email marketing, accounting, HR, payroll, project management, customer support, point of sale, e-commerce. You know, it goes on and on and on. Well, eventually, you will wind up with a Frankenstack of tools that cost a lot and that don't integrate properly. Well, Odoo is here to change that. Odoo is a fully customizable and fully integrated suite of software products that let you build and scale your stack as you build and scale your business. It's simple, it's modular, so you use what you need and all their apps integrate perfectly with each other. How amazing does that sound? Plus, it's all open source, so you can spend that freshly raised capital on talent instead of expensive software. Your first app is free forever. And right now, Odoo is offering, wait for it, $1,000 credit on your first implementation pack. So go to Odoo, odoo.com/twist to check it out. That's odoo.com/twist to get the $1,000 in credit. Who knows how long that'll last, so go now. odoo.com/twist. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. Welcome back to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis. You can follow me on the Twitter at Jason. I'm an angel investor here in Silicon Valley. We do this podcast 2 or 3 days a week, and we're really excited to have today's guest, Songe LaRon, on. He is Songe LaRon on the Twitter, SONGELARON. And he co-founded Squire in 2015. They've been at it for about 5 years, and they are helping barbershops with their scheduling and all their back office, as it were. What was the change like for barbershops in the early stages of the pandemic, the first couple of months, versus now where people are reopening and they're allowed to have people into their barbershops, but still people are cautious?
Yeah, first few months were frightening for everyone, particularly our customers. They were pretty abruptly forced to shut down in most states. And, they're not like a lot of, white collar workers that could just work from home and have that luxury. Yeah, they need to be in the shop cutting in order to provide for their families. So it was very, very difficult and challenging. March, April, we saw almost all of our shops shut down completely during that time. What's that like for you then? Do you then give them a pause on charging them for software or a discount or something? How do you handle that for yourself? Yeah, great question. So early on, we made some really strategic decisions, and we held it up with our leadership team, and we decided that we were going to waive all subscription fees across the board for all current and new customers. We decided at the time to waive it until September, and then we actually decided to extend it until 2021.
Wow.
Yeah.
So no revenue for you during the 2020 pandemic year?
Well, no subscription revenue. So we didn't really get into our revenue model, but we actually make revenue from payment processing and from some other streams as well. But subscription revenue, we decided, and that is the most direct, source of revenue that's felt by the shop owners.
Got it. Yeah. So where do they pay 5% or 10% to pay for fees associated with the credit card?
No, they pay standard, 2.9 plus 30, give or take, that you would find with other similar companies. And then we have a portion of our revenue that is the booking fee that the actual client, the person getting the haircut, pays. Yeah. So they pay $1 or $2 to book the exactly
slot?
When they book and pay. So if you opt into booking and paying, kind of like that Uber experience where you're just in and out, don't have to worry about cash, then you'll pay a slight premium for it. And then if you decide to book without paying, in that case, you wouldn't be wouldn't pay anything extra.
And do you build individual apps for each barbershop, or do you have like a central barbershop app for people to use to aggregate demand?
So we have both. We have what we call a Squire flagship app, which has all the barbershops that are on Squire on it. And then we also do custom branded apps. And in that case, it's the basic functionality is the same, but we customize it to have the look and feel of the shop. So it feels like an extension of their brand, and it doesn't say Squire anywhere on there.
Of the 1,000 people using the platform, how many are back to work in October of 2020?
Fortunately, overwhelming majority are open back up, and not many have shut down for good, which is really good, because that's what we were concerned about, that some shops just wouldn't be able to sustain themselves. But barbershops are very, very resilient businesses, and they typically do very well in economic downturns. Nobody thought about a pandemic happening. That's probably the only circumstance that caused them to close the doors. But fortunately, we're seeing them reopening, bouncing back. Now the revenue is starting to normalize on a per shop basis. So, it's not quite where it was pre-COVID, but their clients are still coming in.
In aggregate, 60, 70, 80%, 90%. What's the average barbershop doing now compared to what they did last year without COVID?
Yeah, I would say on average, probably around 85 to 90%.
That's amazing.
There's some outliers. California, for example, was shut down much longer. And so they're just, recently reopened. But, some states...
Not for Nancy Pelosi. She got to go. Might have been a setup, but who knows?
She did. I wasn't a barbershop, so I'll stay away from that.
That's not in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
When you look at the precautions that are... the other thing that's nice about barbershops, I suppose, is they are asset-light marketplaces. In other words, they don't have... they're not employees, the barbers who are there, so they're not having to pay them if hairs are not getting cut. And if a lot of hair is getting cut, those independent contractors, freelancers get to benefit because they get to make more money and they get to pick their hours.
Exactly.
Is that right in general?
Yeah, exactly. It's very little overhead. The main overhead is the rent, which some landlords were forgiving during that time and worked with them. But that's the main thing. And once the doors open, they can get right back to business.
Do these, you probably have seen, we have Prop 22, which hopefully people vote for, and Uber and Lyft drivers and DoorDash drivers and all those ride-sharing drivers should get to have flexibility and pick their hours. I believe that. Left out of that were barbershops and hair salons, correct?
Yeah, I don't believe that they're part of that.
They're not part of that. So how do you look at that, and the issue around should those freelancers or contractors in your mind be forced to be employees, or should they get to choose to be 1099 or employees? How do you think about that? I'm curious.
I tend to lean on the side of giving optionality, because a lot of barbers really do like the freedom. And many of them are, they're artists, as well as, service providers, and they really do like to be able to come and go as they please. That being said, there's also, a need for, many of them don't have health insurance and, don't have, access to, financial products, and it's hard for them to get loans and et cetera. So I think that, and that's kind of part of where, Squire we see ourselves coming in to play in the long term, is eventually, trying to provide some of those services they typically don't have access to.
Oh, really? So you're thinking about, for your barbers and for hair cutters, to allow them, since you have their information, maybe withhold some of their earnings, their 1099 earnings, and use it for healthcare or something?
Yeah, we're looking at all these options like that. Yeah, so we're looking to fill all the gaps that currently aren't being filled for these customers, and they're very underserved. They're underserved when it comes to banking, financial services, insurance, and you name it. And ultimately, we're just trying to think of where are the areas we can provide the most value, really provide the full suite of offerings that they need.
Yeah, and what's on the top of that list of things you could offer to them?
Financial services is really interesting.
Just having a bank account? Yeah,
bank account, debit cards, potentially loan products. This, it's all, there's nothing coming out right now, but these are things we're looking at. It's they're a demographic that we think has been very underserved.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, if you have their information, you got the payments coming in, why not just give them each an account and a bank account with one of these pop-up services or a debit card they could spend it from, or you could advance them a week or two of their pay if they need it for a fee.
Yeah, I mean, because we touch the entire flow of money from the booking all the way, to paying the shop, to paying out the barber. It gives us insights, and there's a lot of interesting things that we can do that hopefully provide some value.
When they're 1099 employees, they might have one day 10 haircuts, another day 2. So on a day, if they were in the barbershop for 10 hours and they only had 2 haircuts for $30 each, they made 60. They're at $6 an hour. On the day they did 10 at $30 each, they did $300. They made $30 an hour. That's part of the process of being a freelancer, is you only get paid for when you're working, correct? Not when you have downtime.
Yeah, that's the model in the overwhelming majority of barbershop.
And so this seems fair or unfair to you that a per individual gets to pick how they work in this regard. I'm curious how you look at it.
I think it's so you're saying as opposed to...
Well, I mean, you could take the two in this scenario. You could take those 2 days, put them together, and they did 20 hours of work and 12 haircuts for $360, and you could just divide it and give them $16 an hour, $15 an hour, and make them, instead of entrepreneurial and 1099 and getting to take their expenses out, and have that downtime, but they could read a book or do some self-improvement, listen to an audio book, whatever it is, Netflix, binge watch a show. It seems to me there's this very interesting moment in time we're living in where what used to be considered like little entrepreneurial businesses that people could grow up on, we're having unions and other folks say, hey, you're not allowed to work that way. So I'm curious how you think about that. And we'll answer that question when we get back from this quick break. Right now, everything is changing so rapidly, including the sales industry. With face-to-face meetings now a thing of the past, you'll need to quickly adapt your sales strategy if you want to stay ahead. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is the tool that is designed to help you master digital selling. You all know that. With real-time updates, alerts, and thoughtful insights, you'll find new ways to connect with your buyers at a distance. You can tap into that amazing 700 million member network and use LinkedIn Sales Navigator to get those 20 monthly email messages, lead recommendations, and unlimited searches. So you get right to the front of people's inboxes, actionable insights, and access to free courses on LinkedIn Learning. You get everything. And you can target the right prospects and decision makers, which can unlock 18% more pipeline from properly sourced opportunities. You get a 7% lift in win rate and 33% larger deal sizes. As the world adapts to a new working habit, sellers must also shift tactics to stay ahead, and LinkedIn Sales Navigator is that secret weapon that's going to help your sales team do just that. Our sales guy, Matt, here at This Week in Startups, loves LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and he uses it just to precisely target the right people and find the contacts he needs so we can keep This Week in Startups sold out. And that's how we got from 1 episode a week to 2 to 3. And then sometimes we throw in that emergency podcast for you. We got a special offer here, a 60-day free trial of Sales Navigator. In order to unlock that, all you have to do is go to linkedin.com/SaaS, SaaS. That's right. Go to linkedin.com/SaaS to start your free 60-day trial of LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Get your whole sales team in there and start seeing the register ring. Thanks again, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, for joining the This Week in Startups family. Hey, we're back on This Week in Startups talking with Songe LaRon from Squire. You can go check out getsquire.com, and you can download the Squire app, I suppose, and book right now and find a barber.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We were sort of talking about this sort of mini entrepreneurial nature of it, hair cutters, barbers, hairstylists, etc. They all have their own little businesses. They are an entrepreneurial bunch where they move from one salon to another. they might change and say, I got a better deal here, or they might then start their own barbershop. You do see that path, right? In these employees or these freelancers who then become owners of businesses?
All the time. That's kind of the natural trajectory for a successful career in this industry, is that eventually many of them, they want to open a shop, and that's the main way that they can build more wealth and make more money outside of just the number of haircuts they're providing each day. So absolutely, we see that.
And so if they were not 1099 employees, they wouldn't be as portable or flexible. They wouldn't be able to leave and go to work for another one to start their own. They would just be hourly workers who had to work specific shifts, and that would be that would give them less mobility.
It would give them probably less mobility. And also I think that's a type of model that could work for some barbershops that have the resources. But, like we said before, a barbershop is a pretty easy business to start. And the overhead and the amount of assets required is really low. And that's part of one of the appealing reasons of why there's so many shops and why it's interesting for these business owners. If we required all the barbers to be employees, it'd be a really heavy lift, I think, just starting a barbershop and getting it off the ground. So we see that model more like in the franchises that have, 30, 40, 50.
Oh, the supercuts of the world.
Yeah,
they pay people an hourly wage.
Yeah, they pay people hourly. But for the one-off,
so you have to be a shift worker. You got to work 8-hour shifts when they tell you.
Yeah. Typically.
And you got to do X number of hours per week, and you're not allowed to work at another salon.
Yeah.
They basically dictate your entire work.
Yeah, typically, yeah.
See, I think this is the important discussion that people don't understand, is that once you add all these regulations, it becomes impossible for somebody, if they had to hire everybody full time and take on that risk, to pop up a barbershop, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be. We can think of. I'm sure there's room to think of how it could be improved and how we could provide some more safeguards for barbers outside of the current situation. But I definitely think it would be heavy-handed to require all barbers to be employees. We would see a lot of shops shutting down, most likely.
Yeah. This is the thing. I think there's good intention, I think, when people think they're trying to protect workers, but I don't think that this class of worker wants to be forced to be an hourly worker. What do you see amongst that group in terms of, do they want to be hourly workers, or do they just want to be the freelancers the way they are? If you were to ask 10 of them, how many would say, I want the current system? How many would say they want to just make the same amount of money but be hourly?
Yeah, to be fair, I haven't polled this, so I don't know for sure. But anecdotally, I would guess that they like the current system. They want to be able to charge, as much as possible, make as much as possible for the services they're providing, and have the kind of flexibility. And they also like to build their own book of business, many barbers. So that, they like to think that, these are their customers that they've been building. So when they do go to another shop, they can bring those, customers.
How do you do that with the software? I'm curious. How do you manage that with people booking? Do they split the ownership of that lead? Does the individual barber get a copy of the contact information and the store, or does the individual person have to build it up and build up their own phone book on their iPhone?
It varies case by case, and it depends on how the shop is set up. So if they're a booth rental, and each barber is really just an independent business owner doing their own thing, generally they'll have access to the customer data, and they can take it with them. When it's a commission shop and the relationship is with the owner of the shop and Squire, then in that case, we kind of default to the owner and how they want to run it. A lot of times the owners invest a lot of money in marketing and branding into, acquiring these customers. So it's not really fair to them to then have the barbers, take that information. Take the
book of business and leave and start a competitor. Yeah.
Yeah. Across the street, which we've seen a lot of times actually.
Oh, really? Yeah. There's a little competition going there.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the culture of barbershops and what they represent sort of in society, and then how you think about that in terms of building the software for these barbershops. Obviously, building a dedicated app is part of that, right? People want to have the look and feel. Talk to me a little bit about that culture and what they represent in terms of community building, and then what do these barbershops make in terms of what's their TAM for all the barbershops or individual barbershops? What can they expect to make?
Yeah. So in terms of the culture, it's a subculture really. And the people in this industry are some of the most passionate people I've ever worked with. They don't look at being a barber as like a job or even a profession. Most of them, they look at it as their life calling. And they'll tell you, being a barber saved my life. I was doing this before, I was doing that before. And this is the one thing that really has given them meaning. So it's really inspiring to be working with them. And they're also very proud of what they do. That's like the fact that we're so specialized and so focused on this vertical really gives us an advantage relative to competitors who are trying to go horizontally after a lot of different verticals. They know that Squire is frankly, it's the only company that is dedicated exclusively to them and to solving their needs and to providing value. So that's something that we're really proud of as well.
What does a barbershop make? The average barbershop in your system, you got 1,000 of them, so you probably have some aggregate data. What does an average barbershop generate in terms of revenue? If they had 6 chairs, 12 chairs, I guess the average is 6 chairs.
Average is about five or 6 chairs. On average, they make about 150, 160,000 a year card processed, and then layer cash on top of that. So
you double it.
I would say not quite double because you're seeing more card users actually.
About 50% maybe then.
Yeah, about 50%. Yeah.
So $250,000 a year for a barbershop. Yeah, some expense.
On average.
50% margin, 35% margin they run at?
About 50%. It depends on the commission breakdown with the barbers. But it's usually, somewhere around 50%.
Yeah. See, the problem I have right now is having moved to the Bay Area from New York. I used to go to Astor Place. Boom, quick. I got my person, get my hair cut. The problem is I moved to San Francisco.
You know the history of Astor Place barbershop, right?
What's that?
Do you know like kind of the story about Astor Place and like who owns it? And
the only thing I knew about Astor Place was when I was a kid in the 80s, we would go to the city and it was $12 and we'd give the lady who did it for us, like a 20, and we were all stars. We got to the front of the list and we would just all go get our hair cut, like every 2 months or whatever, take the R train there. But I don't know the backstory on Astor Place.
I mean, it's a famous barbershop in New York. Anybody, in downtown area has heard of it. Great shop, old school, in and out, like you said,
no muss, no fuss.
Yeah, no muss, no fuss. But just put it this way. It's not the kind of shop where you'd ever want to think about, not paying or walking out or doing anything like that. The guys who ran that shop.
Oh, it was legit. Some Italian guys, maybe?
Yeah.
I have a feeling I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I'll leave it at that.
You probably do want to pay. What was great about Astor Place, I have to say, back in the day, was it was such a mecca of many different cultures because they cut white guys' hair, they cut black guys' hair. It was a bit of a crossover, right? Mm-hmm. So there were in the 90s when I was in school at Fordham, we go down there. You would have working class people, you'd have hip hop people, you'd have NYU students, you have gay people, straight people. It was really like a cross section of New York. You'd have bankers going, all the way down to students, to grandpas. Everybody would just go in there and get a quick cut. Boom, you're done, right? For $12, $15. But the average cut now is 30. What's the average cut now in the United States for men's haircut, buzz cut?
Yeah, on our system, it's about 40, but average across US probably about 30, 24, 30 including tip.
It's getting crazy expensive. And then the problem I have with everything is the hipsters took over and they're making barbershops, hipster barbershops like Public Works and all these, places. They're kind of making them cookie cutter hipster. I don't like this hipster trend.
Yeah, I mean, nobody self-identifies or likes hipsters. For some reason, it's like a term they're like, we all know they exist.
Hipsters. Hipsters are annoying.
But nobody claims to be one. But I know the type of shops you're talking about. I personally, those shops are great for our business. They charge high price points.
That's the problem. They want to charge $60 for a quick buzz cut. And I'm like,
But we know why? Because they're focused on providing an experience.
That's not the experience I'm looking for.
They're also
I want the Astor Place experience, in and out.
I love Astor Place too, and we try to work with all types of shops. But I think there is room. I think there is room in the market for what they're offering, which is clear because there's been so many of them. That, there's not a lot of places guys can go to kind of be pampered in a masculine way and still feel, masculine about it. And that's what they're providing, when they're for whiskey.
Because they give you the neck massage and everything.
Yeah.
So you get to like still be like a tough guy, but you got your neck massaged and it's still
Exactly.
I got you. All right. When we get back from this, I want to understand why, how people are doing this all safely in COVID and what the best practice is and when we should all think about the risk of going back, because that is something I've been thinking about. I got one cut during COVID famously by my celebrity hairstylist for men groomer down when I was in Malibu for a couple of weeks at the beach house. But now I got to get back into my regular, and I want to know what the precautions are when we get back on This Week in Startups. SaaS companies with reoccurring revenue used to have basically two ways to get cash and to grow. One is you sell equity. That works, sure, why not? Or you can get debt. Okay, that's a little scary, it's a loan. Well, now there's a brand new third way to grow without debt or dilution, and that's Pipe, Pipe.com. It's a two-sided marketplace like Airbnb or eBay. You know what a marketplace is. And what they do there is they connect SaaS companies who have monthly or quarterly reoccurring revenue with institutional investors who will bid in order to purchase that revenue on an annual upfront basis. So you're charging monthly, quarterly, and these investors come and they say, we'll give you that money now so you can deploy it, and we'll bid. We'll give you 93 cents, 94 cents. It's a pretty interesting, clever idea, right? They get a little bit of the spread and you get that cash up front to deploy to build your company. Pretty slick, right? Well, Pipe is the smarter way to grow your business. It's super founder friendly, and it's a great way for you to grow without debt, loans, or dilution. Pipe is also frictionless and completely transparent. It only takes a couple of minutes to sign up, and you'll have the cash in your bank within 24 hours. Pipe is so confident you'll love trading your SaaS subscription that if you sign up by the end of November, they'll eliminate all your trading fees for 1 full year. This could save you tens of thousands of dollars depending on the size of your business and the volume you trade. So happy piping. Sign up today at pipe.com/twist. 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 Welcome back. Songe, LaRon is here from Squire. All right, what is the best practice now? I know there's been a couple of outbreaks at hair salons, but the customers didn't get it. Like a couple of people working in the hair salon got it. That was the only, I heard that like one anecdotal story a couple of months ago. But everybody seems to be going back and getting haircuts. What's the best practice now, and what's the safety track record like? Yeah,
so as the states reopen, pretty much every state imposed guidelines for salons and barbershops to reopen safely. And, there's some variance, but across the board, masks should be required from the barber as well as the client. There should be no walk-ins. There should be appointments only. So people are showing up at the time of their appointment and they're waiting outside of the shop. So there's no more waiting inside the shop. There should be disinfecting of the barber chair, all of the supplies, all of the tools. A lot of states are requiring disposable capes. So you're not using an old cape that somebody wore just before you.
That's smart.
Yeah.
I like the disposable cape. Just for cleanliness in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paper, just make it out of paper. Toss it afterwards.
Yeah, just toss it.
Are people reconfiguring these and putting plastic between the stations, or is that like overkill?
I've seen that. It's not like across the board, but I've seen some shops experimenting with that. Which the plastic buffer is always, because like the germs can go over the plastic.
Yeah, that one doesn't make sense to me. Like if you're in a confined space, it really is the density of the space and then the mask wearing. So people just need to be vigilant about on both sides wearing masks, and then the face shield is like an extra protection for dentists and people who have to do this 10 times a day.
Yeah.
And that seems to work, right?
That works. I mean, first of all, barbers are probably one of the only types of professionals who are actually trained on this prior to COVID.
Oh, really?
To get their license, they have to study, how to disinfect materials, how to not, spread disease like that. That's all part of their education anyway. Now you add this COVID situation, and like they're one of the best prepared types of professionals, in my opinion, to handle this versus like, a waiter who just could be anybody. So barbers have to be licensed according to, state law. And in terms of like what we're seeing, like you said, there have been reports of spread, in some, I think it was a salon actually. But interestingly, in that salon, they all wore masks and no clients were infected. So I mean, it goes to show, and there were like hundreds of cuts performed. So it goes to show you like the power of actually wearing, if everybody wears a mask and if the procedures are followed.
That's a very interesting point. If we just studied barbershops, which have, 5 chairs and 10 customers for each chair, you got 50 people coming in and out a day with 5 barbers and, probably a reception area. So you're talking about, 6 stationary people and 50 people coming in and out. You could just use that as your testing and tracing. And then eventually people could test when they get to the barbershop. I don't know if you've seen that starting yet, but I predict that's going to become the big win is just come to the barbershop and get tested, and we'll throw in the $15 test. Yeah,
government should really be working with barbershops because they're really, there's hubs of the community, and people are going to continue getting haircuts, as long as they can. And had barbershops been a vector of spread, like they'd be shut down immediately. Like we would have heard about it, and so we know that that's not happening.
It's definitely not a major spreader because, like you said, you're going to have 100% compliance in there, because if you were using razors and doing shaves and you're using clippers, you already know to disinfect that stuff. These people are hyper vigilant. They keep every piece of equipment cleaned and wiped down. They do it in front of you as part of the show, right? It's part of the show.
It's part of the show. And a lot of that practice really became really prevalent during the HIV epidemic. People didn't know if you could get HIV from a haircut. So they really had to hone in on how to disinfect and how to, make sure people are safe. And now in this environment, I think that they're some of the best trained people and they're the most ready to handle it.
Yeah, that is amazing. Thinking back on it, there was that moment in time where people during HIV were like, oh my God, Magic Johnson can't play basketball because he's going to sweat on somebody. They're going to transfer HIV. Or what if somebody gets a nick while they're getting at the barbershop? Everybody in the barbershop's going to get AIDS. And I was like, that's not how it works. We know a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so how did you wind up getting into all of this? I know you were... I think you were a lawyer before this, doing M&A, right?
Yeah, I was an M&A lawyer at a big firm in New York, and
where? Skadden Arps, Sherman Sterling.
Skadden. Good guess.
You were at Skadden?
yeah.
Where did you go? Columbia, NYU?
For law, I went to Yale.
I was about to say I was triangulating. You did not get into Skadden Arps unless you were Ivy League. Where'd you go undergrad?
UCLA. Yeah.
Okay, so UCLA, then you went to Yale Law.
Yeah.
You were at Skadden up on, what is that, Lex and 55th?
No, it's the Condé Nast Building. Well, they used to be in the Condé Nast Building. I don't know if they're still there.
Oh, the Condé Nast
Times Square. Times Square. Yeah.
Oh, I know. Oh, that's right. That's Skadden. I was thinking Sherman Sterling's over on Lex and 55th.
Yeah.
Skadden was in the... Oh, yeah, I remember that because... Anyway, I had a friend and who worked at Skadden, and he'd be like, right, you were at Skadden. They would be like, the Vogue elevator. There was like all these stories about like the Vogue elevator bank was, and the Skadden lawyers, Vogue elevator bank. There was some collisions occurring, maybe some of them intentional back in the day.
I'm sure more intentional on the Skadden side.
On the Skadden side, I think it was more intentional to try to meet, the folks working at Vogue. So you quit that to go start a company? That was a big jump. How did that go down? So
I always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. Didn't know what. I had started in between. I took 1 year off in between undergrad and law school. or actually, started a company, not a tech company, because I didn't know about tech at that point. It was like a tutoring company. So it was always kind of in my mind that I wanted to do something. And then my co-founder and I, we would just brainstorm ideas, and we came across the idea of like, wow, the barbershop experience can really be improved. And the more research we did, the more we saw that this was a real opportunity. And so, decided to just jump into it head first.
Is there and gave up the 150 from scatting?
Oh, it was more than that.
Yeah, I was just thinking starting. I was thinking, isn't starting like 150, 175? Or am I outdated now?
I think it was like 160 when I was there. So by now it's probably way more. I don't know what it is now.
But there's too many lawyers now, right? That's hard? I mean, you have to be elite to get into scatting, but they're not throwing those 175 out of school gigs to everybody anymore.
Yeah, no,
it's not that many of
competitive.
them.
Yeah, it's very
competitive.
Yeah.
What is the outcome here in terms of scaling? Because there's a limited number of barbershops. So are you thinking about salons or massage places or other things? Or is there enough barbershops for you to keep going here? How many barbershops are there in the United States?
Yeah, there's surprisingly a lot more barbershops than most people would think. And there's actually not a lot of great data on the number of barbershops. So you kind of have to do some work to get to a number. Our research puts the number at anywhere between 250 and 400,000 in the US.
Oh, wow.
If you include like unisex barbershops or salons, which we do include in our market size, but just pure barbershops, we think there's at least 250,000.
Oh, so you're not even 1%.
We're barely scratching the surface. So, we know that we can build a really big, successful company just on barbershops. That being said, if 5 years from now we see that we're tapping out on that, there's other verticals we could explore because the software could work for a lot of other verticals. But I think that there's a real power in being focused and being targeted. So we've got a lot of room to grow in this space.
Awesome. Well, listen, continued success. What about my need? Let's talk about my need, which is I need to be able to book an hour and just pop in and get it done for 20 minutes because they always make me wait. Then I'm late. Then they put 3 people in front of me. I can't take it. Is that available where I could just VIP it and take an hour slot and just pop in anytime I want?
So the system could work for that. Like you can totally do that on Squire. The problem is these guys come up with solutions for like, the 99% of the customers. Like people like you are like that. It's
we
very
need a
small
big fish VIP experience. We need a bottle service experience. I want to be able to go and have a bottle, pop a bottle, and have an hour window.
I think I could get that done for you.
I think they should really think about the VIP kind of situation where
if you're willing to pay, they'll do it. They'll do it.
No, I literally had my assistant do that because I was getting admonished by the barbershop receptionist. And she's like, listen, you're late every time. And I was like, listen, I give 100% tip. You're charging me $45. I give you 100 every time. Just book 2 appointments and give me the whole window. She said, well, my boss doesn't let me do that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. We'll talk offline. I think I can make some recommendations.
What about the at-home kind of market? Has that ever, or is it just people want to go and have the experience and that just adds too much cost to it?
Yeah, we looked at that early on and there were some companies trying to do it and I don't think it panned out so well. It's just not, there's the subset of customers who are willing to pay the premium that it takes to make that a feasible business model. It's just, you can't build a whole business around it.
You have to charge 3 times, right?
Yeah, you have to charge 3 times. You have to pay for, travel costs and the time that it takes to get from point A to point B. And then the experience is just kind of not great. You got hair all over and people prefer to just go into the shop. Yeah.
I wish I could go into the shop if they just didn't ding me for being late all the time. I need a little more flexibility on that. Listen, continued success with it. And I'm sorry we couldn't do this in person, but pandemic, so everything's virtual. Where are you guys based?
We're New York, but we're distributors. So we've got people all over.
Yeah, well, that's the way to do it now. All right. Well, listen, stay safe and thanks for doing it. And
thank you.
Thank goodness that these small businesses are back up and running. This really makes me feel good that they're at 85% now or more, and that we're going to save these businesses. So if you are listening, and you do book an appointment, do me a favor, if you have the means, just give that big, huge tip if you can, right? And if you're listening to this podcast, there's no reason you can't give a 50% or 100% tip on your barbershop. And this is the year to do it. Just give that 100% tip.
Yeah,
so they're charging you 40, you just give them 80. That's it. They need the money right now. Help bridge that extra 15%, and maybe they're in arrears on some of their bills, so it helps. Give a huge tip if you can, people. All right, we'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.